What if your baby chose you long before you even thought of having them, and you just forgot? We talk about pregnancy like it starts with a test, a symptom, a due date. But what if it started before biology, before time, with a decision made in a place your conscious mind can't access? Think about the moments in your life that didn't add up, that dream you had about a child, before you even missed your period. That strange sense of presence at 3 a.m., when your body felt different, but nothing could explain it. That chill that ran through you the day you found out you were pregnant, like someone had finally arrived. Most people ignore these signs. They laugh it off. Hormones, stress, imagination. But deep down, something about it felt real. And here's the real pain. We've been taught to treat pregnancy as biology, not mystery. To count days, not moments. To measure growth, not connection. So, when things don't go as planned, miscarriage, infertility, unexpected loss, we blame ourselves. Or worse, we assume there was no meaning in it at all. But what if none of it was random? What if souls don't just appear, but choose? In this video, we're going to explore one of the most ancient, mystical, and controversial questions ever asked. When does the soul actually enter the human body? Not from a single religion, not from superstition, but from a fusion of science, ancient wisdom, real experiences from real people, and spiritual truths that most have forgotten. You'll hear stories of mothers who felt their child's presence before conception, evidence from neurologists and quantum physicists about the moment consciousness might truly begin, and teachings from Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, and Taoism that describe the descent of the soul not as a spark, but as a sacred, layered arrival. Because maybe the soul doesn't enter with a bang, but with a whisper. And maybe, just maybe, you've already met the soul that's coming to you in dreams, in silence, in signs you never knew how to interpret. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at life or yourself the same way again. They say life begins at birth, but those who've really looked deeper know it starts long before that. The real question isn't when the body forms, it's when the soul says yes. And that answer depends on who you ask and what you're willing to believe. Some believe it happens the instant the sperm meets the egg. That tiny, microscopic flash, the cellular explosion where two lineages collide, is seen by many spiritual traditions as the cosmic green light. At that moment, they say, a unique energy field is born, a vibrational signature that didn't exist seconds before. Certain Christian schools, along with esoteric mystics, teach that the soul rushes in like lightning anchored the moment life is sparked. Stories from mothers seem to support this. Vivid dreams the night of conception, or sudden energetic shifts in their bodies that left them speechless, sensing something had entered, not imagined, not metaphor, but real. Others argue that the soul waits and only steps in during implantation, when the embryo truly attaches to the mother's womb, around day 6 to 12. Until then, the body is just blueprint, a structure, a potential home. But when the embryo connects with the mother, something deeper occurs. A bond is forged, an energetic contract sealed. Interestingly, it's also when pregnancy hormones begin to rise, the body announcing, on a biochemical level, someone's here. Some shamanic traditions describe this window as a negotiation not in words, but in energy. The soul assesses, tests the vessel, aligns with the emotional atmosphere. It's like choosing to move into a house only after feeling the walls breathe and hearing how the wind flows through its bones. And then there's a third view, perhaps the most poetic, that the soul waits until the first heartbeat, around week 3, a moment so quiet, most miss it. A speck-sized organ begins to pulse on its own, not pushed, not commanded. It simply starts like it remembers how. For countless cultures, the heart isn't just an organ, it's a portal, the seat of the soul. Egyptians believed the heart was weighed in the afterlife to measure one's worth. Greeks said it held courage. Chinese medicine mapped entire emotions to its rhythm. So when that tiny heart begins to beat, some believe that's when the soul truly enters, not just as an observer, but as a resident. I'm here, it says with each pulse. I'm alive. and I'm ready. So, which is true? Well, maybe all of them. Maybe the soul doesn't drop in all at once like a parachute. Maybe it arrives in layers, in phases. First, the invitation. Then, the agreement. Finally, the embodiment. Some mystics say the soul is too vast, too multidimensional to rush into density in one shot. So it moves like light descending into water gradually, adjusting with every layer it passes through. That's why different people remember different moments. Why some mothers feel it early, others feel it later. Because the soul, like everything sacred, honors timing over certainty. And maybe that's the point. Maybe there's no single doorway into life but a corridor of thresholds, a sacred unfolding, one breath at a time. They say nothing really happens in the beginning, that the first few weeks of pregnancy are quiet, uneventful. But mothers who've lived through it will tell you otherwise. They'll talk about the strange dreams, the sudden inner knowing, the feeling that someone is already there, watching quietly from the edge of reality. And if you listen closely, you'll hear the same phrase echo again and again. I felt them before I knew. The first 40 days, that's the window. The sacred stretch of time that nearly every spiritual tradition across cultures has marked as holy. 40 days of rain in the flood, 40 days of fasting in the desert, 40 days under the Bodhi tree. It's not coincidence, it's cosmic rhythm. Something happens in that span that defies logic but resonates with truth. Because within those first 5.5 weeks, the foundations of life aren't just built physically, they're formed energetically, emotionally, spiritually. Cell by cell, yes, but also light by light, thread by thread. During this time, many women experience what can only be called transmissions, not in language, but in presence. A moment of stillness, a whisper in the dark, a rush of emotion that comes out of nowhere and leaves just as fast. Some report waking at the same hour every night, feeling as though someone has entered the room. Others describe seeing a face in dreams, or hearing a name, or walking into a space and just knowing they were no longer alone in their body. One mother told me she kept seeing golden flowers in her mind's eye. She didn't know why, until weeks later, when her daughter was born, and instinctively reached for a flower in the hospital bed. Science struggles with this. There's no scan for soul, no lab test that measures the weight of presence, but ask any mother who's been through it, and they'll tell you, it's not a metaphor. It's not hormones. It's real. Their intuition sharpens, their senses heighten, time warps. It's like entering a space between worlds where clocks don't matter, and logic fades behind the veil. Some call it magic, others call it madness. But either way, it marks a before and an after. What makes these first 40 days even more mysterious is that they almost always happen before the mother even confirms the pregnancy. It's as if the soul chooses to arrive quietly to do its groundwork in secret, settling in before the physical world catches on. Maybe that's why these early signs are so easily dismissed. We're trained to believe that meaning follows proof, but here, the meaning arrives first. The proof comes later. There's also something beautifully symbolic about the number itself. In sacred numerology, 5, the number of weeks and days in this window, represents human experience in full form. 5 senses, 5 limbs, 5 elements. Like the soul is slowly wrapping itself in each one, preparing for the sensory overload of Earth. Some Eastern traditions even speak of the first spiritual breath, not the breath taken at birth, but an energetic inhale that begins during this window. The soul starts breathing in human reality and breathing out its divine memory into the forming body. It's a process of slow acclimation, like a diver going deeper into unknown waters. The body forms rapidly, the nervous system, the tiny buds of arms and legs, the first stirrings of a heart. But beneath that, something else is forming too. A relationship, a contract, a soft anchoring between two worlds. And while the science will continue catching up, the soul quietly, intentionally, is already arriving. Western minds often want answers, with sharp edges, clear beginnings, clear ends. But in the East, truth unfolds like mist over water. It doesn't strike, it settles. So when it comes to the question of when the soul enters the body, the East doesn't give a single answer. It gives a journey. In Hinduism, the soul, the Atman, doesn't just arrive. It descends gradually through layers of vibration. Like light moving through different densities, it falls from spirit into matter across 7 levels of reality. This descent is called Sapapatala, the 7 falls of consciousness. The first fall happens at conception, where the divine spark touches the edge of form. But it's not full presence. It's the beginning of embodiment, not the end. As the pregnancy unfolds, each level of descent brings new anchoring points: the development of chakras, the formation of the energy body, the linking of karmic memory. According to some yogic teachings, it's only around the 4th month that the soul is fully embedded, bringing with it not just life, but its purpose, its lessons, and its spiritual history. In Tibetan Buddhism, the journey is even more specific. The soul, or more precisely, the stream of consciousness, goes through an in-between state after death called the bardo. For up to 49 days, it drifts, watching, listening, scanning the possibilities of rebirth. It doesn't just fall into a womb randomly. It chooses. It observes the karmic compatibility of parents, the environment, even the emotional energy surrounding conception. And here's the stunning part. Many teachings suggest that the soul influences events leading up to conception itself, guiding encounters, inspiring timing, like an invisible conductor orchestrating the first notes of its next life. The soul doesn't just enter, it prepares the landing. And then there's Taoism, the poetic heart of the East. It teaches that every soul is like a drop of rain forming in the clouds of the Tao, the source of all being. During pregnancy, this drop condenses gradually, taking shape as it nears the earth. But even after it falls, even after birth, it remains connected to the clouds. Taoists describe 3 aspects of the soul, called hun, that enter the body at different stages. The first comes at conception, bringing basic vitality. The second arrives around the 3rd month, shaping personality and emotion. The third only fully descends at birth, bringing higher awareness and spiritual memory. In this view, incarnation isn't a single door, it's a spiral staircase. What unites these Eastern perspectives is the idea that the soul is far too complex, too layered, to be reduced to a single moment. It's not a switch you flip. It's a process of embodiment, a sacred choreography between energy and matter. Each layer descends in its own time, according to its own rhythm. And perhaps this is why some mothers feel their baby's essence weeks before conception, or only during the 2nd trimester, or not until the child is born and locks eyes with them for the first time, because the soul arrives when it's ready, and not all of it comes at once. The East doesn't demand that we understand. It invites us to feel, to sense the mystery unfolding, not as a fact to be pinned down, but as a presence to be witnessed. When you see life this way, pregnancy becomes more than biology. It becomes a ceremony, a bridge, a sacred descent from cloud to skin. In most churches, you're taught that life begins at conception, full stop. But beneath the stained glass and sacred texts, there's an older, quieter thread, a mystical Christianity that whispers of deeper layers. Saints, mystics, and visionaries who didn't just believe in the soul's descent, they saw it. Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century German abbess and mystic, described visions where the soul came down like a golden light, flowing from the heart of God. It didn't crash into the body like a meteor. It hovered, waited, condensed. She said the soul only entered fully when the embryo was ready to receive it, not biologically but spiritually. In her writings, each soul brought 3 divine gifts: vitality, wisdom, and love. But they didn't all arrive at once. They anchored in layers over time, like a candle being lit slowly from within. Other texts, apocryphal gospels, left out of the official canon, speak of a moment when the Holy Spirit covers the forming being, sealing it with presence. A moment not of biology, but of sacred recognition. Not something visible to the eyes, but felt by those with spiritual sight. Meister Eckhart, the great mystic preacher of medieval Germany, once said the soul enters not like water into a jar, but like one flame lighting another. No sound, no bang, just ignition. His sermons describe incarnation as a kind of spiritual fire, where the divine spark in the soul wakes matter up from the inside. The body doesn't house the soul, it partners with it. The Desert Fathers, early Christian monks who fled to the Egyptian wilderness, spoke of angels weaving the soul into the body like a garment, one thread at a time, not sewn on, but interwoven. And not just into flesh, but into what they called the three bodies: physical, etheric, and astral. The physical forms first, then the etheric, the life field, then the astral emotion, memory, dream. The soul, they said, must touch all three before the incarnation is whole. Saint Teresa of Avila, in her ecstatic visions, described the soul as having 7 interior chambers, like rooms within a divine palace. During pregnancy, she said, those chambers are lit one by one, not by biology, but by grace. And the full illumination? It takes exactly 280 days, the span of a full-term pregnancy. And then there's the Gnostic view, more esoteric, more layered. Gnostic Christians believed that the soul passed through 12 celestial spheres on its descent into matter. In each one, it picked up a quality, a strength, a lesson, a wound. The soul didn't fall into earth. It journeyed, it prepared, and the moment of entry wasn't random, it was calculated, precise, chosen. Jacob Boehme, the German mystic philosopher, wrote about something called the spiritual tincture, a kind of divine essence the soul leaves inside the body when it enters. He said sensitive mothers could feel it, a sweetness, a divine warmth spreading through their being, like being touched by something holy. And Emanuel Swedenborg, the Swedish visionary, saw a silver cord, an energetic thread that links the soul to the higher realms from the moment of incarnation until the moment of death. He claimed that those with spiritual vision could actually see this cord glowing faintly, stretching into the unseen. What all these mystics share is a reverence for the soul's timing, a knowing that incarnation is not a mechanical event, but a sacred descent, a process guided not just by biology, but by angels, by light, by intelligence beyond form, and that every child who enters this world does so with accompaniment protected, watched over, and chosen. In this view, pregnancy is not a countdown. It's a ritual. The body doesn't just grow a child, it builds a temple. And when the soul is ready, it walks in, barefoot, radiant, and remembering. For centuries, science stayed silent on the soul. Not because it didn't matter, but because it couldn't be measured. No microscope can catch consciousness. No MRI lights up a soul. But slowly, quietly, modern science has started to stumble into mystery, and it's listening now. Dr. Peter Hepper, from Queen's University in Belfast, found that fetuses as early as 18 weeks react to specific music, not just any sound, but with preference. Some responded more to Bach, others calmed with lullabies. Even more surprising, they recognized their mother's voice. Not just sound, but emotion, familiarity, connection. This isn't about hearing, it's about awareness. Then came Dr. Joseph Benvenuto in Italy, who documented children under 3 describing events from inside the womb, conversations their parents had, the way a room smelled, songs that were playing. These weren't guesses, they were verified, and they defied everything neuroscience believed about memory. Dr. Catherine Monk from Columbia University discovered something even more haunting. A fetus's heartbeat can change based on the mother's thoughts, not just stress or hormones, but emotions. If she feels sadness, the rhythm shifts. If she feels peace, it returns. It's as if 2 consciousnesses are sharing the same energetic frequency, syncing moment by moment. And there's more. German researcher Fritz Albert Popp found that all living cells emit a subtle field of light called biophotons. Under certain conditions during pregnancy, the field around the fetus glows in patterns that don't match physical development. It suggests an additional energy source, something beyond biology might be present, radiating from within. Japanese scientist Kazuo Murakami studied spontaneous gene activation and found that certain intuitive or creative genes turn on without any physical trigger. During pregnancy, some of these switches flipped, as if following an invisible code, a sequence not from the body, but from intention, from intelligence, and perhaps the most staggering. Around the 25th week, fetal brainwaves begin to mirror those of experienced meditators. Brainwaves that, until now, we only saw in monks. The kind of calm, conscious awareness most adults spend decades trying to find. And there it is inside a womb. Some researchers call this external interface. Others admit they don't fully understand it. But those who've worked closely with prenatal development, from neuroscientists to OBs to intuitive midwives, speak of moments when it becomes clear. This child is not just forming, they are arriving. Which leads us to something ancient that science is only beginning to validate. The soul may not be placed into the body. It may choose it. Through thousands of regression sessions, hypnotherapist Dr. Michael Newton documented cases of people recalling the time before they were born, not as dreams, but as clear memory. They described meeting spirit guides, reviewing their past lives, and selecting the family they would be born into, not randomly, intentionally. Like a student choosing a teacher, a teammate choosing a team. Sometimes they change their mind. They observed the first few weeks of embryonic life before committing. And sometimes they left deciding the timing, the vessel, or the lesson wasn't right. It reframes miscarriage, infertility, and loss, not as failure, not as punishment, but as sacred decisions. From the other side, it also reframes parenting. Because if your child chose you not for your perfection, but for your presence, then every moment with them is a shared contract. Every challenge is a mutual lesson. Every joy, a signal that the agreement is being honored. Parenthood becomes less about control and more about collaboration. So maybe the soul doesn't just enter. Maybe it arrives eyes wide open, carrying memory, mission, and meaning. Not all at once, but slowly, intentionally, in layers. And when it does, life as you knew it shifts. Because now, you're not just living your story. You're part of someone else's beginning. And if this story resonated with you, if it opened something you've always felt but never had words for, hit that follow button. I share more stories like this. Honest, human, and deeply spiritual without the fluff. And if you know someone who's pregnant, or healing, or wondering about life before life, send this to them. It might give them the one answer they didn't know they needed. We're not just bodies. We're not just biology. We're memory in motion. And the soul? It never forgets where it came from or why it came.